Today we're going to be ranking UFC fighters based on how much I would like to hang out with them or like have dinner with them or like chill back with them or have something. You know what? Let's go with dinner. That's what we're going to do. Let's rank fighters on how I would like to hang out with them. We're going to have S, A, B, C, and D tier. Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. If you are new here, my name is Kyle. I am your guy with too many YouTube channels and welcome back to another UFC tier list video. Today we are going through Tapology's top 50 fighters ranked by the community of Tapology, by the way. So these aren't fighters that I picked. These are the top 50 fighters that was on Tapology that most fans would like to hang out with, and I'm going to give my take on it. I'm going to rank them from S to D tier, and that's pretty much it. Let's get into the tier list. I'd love to know what you guys think about afterwards. Thank you so much for coming to the video. Nate Diaz. A long time ago, I would have said probably S tier. I was a big fan of the Diaz brothers, but Nate, as time went on, I was less and less of a fan of him. To be honest with you, I liked Nate when he was relatively unknown. He was one of those guys that would fight anybody. So Nate Diaz is a C tier. I don't dislike him, but I wouldn't really care for him. I feel like C tier is like where I'd be like, I'd go, but I wouldn't really get too much out of it. Now, Diego Sanchez, to be honest with you guys, I'm not too big of a Diego Sanchez fan either. It's not that I like, and something that I do want to get out of the way is if I'm throwing someone in the D tier, unless I specify that I don't like them, do not assume that I don't like him. It's just like, they don't really mean much to me. You know what I mean? So, Diego Sanchez, D tier. Alistair Overeem, though, I am a big fan of. One of my favorite heavyweights to watch. Love his Muay Thai. I would like ask him questions. And again, I'm assuming this is like dinner or something. I would ask him how it felt to like get clobbered by Ngannou, and I would ask him like, okay, what were you thinking, like the Stipe stuff? There would be like a lot of things because I watched so much of his career. There'd be a lot of things I would really like to talk to him about. So, Alistair Overeem, I'm going to put in the B tier. B tier. Ben Askren, though. Ben Askren, I'm a big fan of Ben Askren. Ben Askren is hilarious. I love Ben Askren. I love one championship, and oh my god, Ben Askren is an absolute, I would love to hang out with. S tier for Ben Askren. I would ask him, to be honest with you, I talked to him about Masvidal. I would talk to him about his whole career, man. I really, really like that guy. Gina Carano, though. Gina Carano, I would like to hang out with her, man. You could ask her about acting, you could talk about fighting, you could go into like different conversations with her, you know what I mean? Gina Carano, I'd go with the A tier for her. Okay, let's keep going though. Let's keep going with Carlos Condit. Guys, I mentioned this in my other tier list video, which go check it out, by the way, if you're enjoying this. I have a ranking all my favorite fighters tier list. Carlos Condit is responsible. I'm not going to tell the whole story. Carlos Condit is responsible for me becoming a super fan of MMA. I watched him versus George St. Pierre, and then after that fight, I followed MMA. From that day forward, I became a super fan. I started participating in martial arts because of him. I started watching MMA because of him. Carlos Condit is responsible for that. My first scream at a UFC fight was when he head kicked GSP. Carlos Condit is absolutely S tier. S tier for sure. Daniel Cormier, though. Daniel Cormier, if you see any clip of Daniel Cormier, he seems like an all-around fun dude to hang out with, okay? You can talk to him about fighting. You can talk about his career. Daniel Cormier, too, and like the pranks that he would pull on people. And plus, if you're talking about like a dinner hangout session with him, like you're going out to dinner, this dude would eat for a while, and it would be really fun, okay? Daniel Cormier is in the S tier. I'm going to put him in front of Ben Askren. Dominic Cruz, though. This is tough because I was a big fan of Dominic Cruz for a very long time. But as of recent, he's become a salty little guy, you know? So I've been liking him a little bit less. However, I still am, at the end of the day, a Dominic Cruz fan. I find his footwork fascinating. I would love to talk to him about his training and how he like became the fighter that he once was. How did he develop that style? I would love to hear about it. But I like Dominic Cruz as a guy, okay? I'm going to put Dominic Cruz into the A tier. I'm going to put him in front of Gina Carano, okay? Cowboy Cerrone, though. Cowboy Cerrone, I feel like he would just order some beers, get really drunk. Nothing wrong with that, but I wouldn't mind hanging out with him. I'm going to put him in the B tier, Cowboy Cerrone. Now, Big Country. Oh, Big Country, man. Big Country. Where am I going to throw Big Country? Big Country's a cool guy. I like Big Country. I'm going to put him into the C tier in front of Nate Diaz. Now, Frankie Edgar. What a career this guy has had. I would love to hang out with Frankie Edgar. He seems like a great guy. I would talk to him about his retirement. I would love to hear how he's doing, you know. I really like Frankie Edgar, and I really like his career. I'm going to throw Frankie Edgar into the B tier, right behind Cowboy Cerrone. That's where I'm going to put him. Forrest Griffin, though. Forrest Griffin, very, very funny, man. I like Forrest Griffin. I like everything that he does. I liked watching, like, I went back and watched a lot of Forrest Griffin's fights because I enjoyed seeing him from I started becoming a UFC fan when Forrest Griffin was, like, not done, but on his way out. So, Forrest Griffin, man, I really like that guy. I'm going to throw Forrest Griffin into the A tier in front of Dominic Cruz. That's where I'm going to put him. But Clay Guida, man, this dude is still going. Could you imagine the jiu-jitsu conversations you could talk about with this guy? Clay Guida's crazy. Clay Guida would be fun. I'm a fan of Clay Guida. I'm going to throw him into the A tier also, right behind Forrest Griffin. Now, Dan Hardy, oh my goodness, guys. Dan Hardy, could you imagine the intellectual breakdowns that you could have talk about with Dan Hardy? I really like Dan Hardy. I miss Inside the Octagon so much with Dan Hardy. I love his YouTube channel. We could talk about making content, you know? Dan Hardy's great. Dan Hardy is fantastic. I'm putting Dan Hardy in the S tier. But I'm not as big of a fan as Dan Hardy as I am these three. I would really like to have a sit down with him, man. I would love to ask him, as a super fan of MMA, I would love to ask him what he thinks about various fights and all that. Let's keep going, though. Benson Henderson. Not going to lie, I don't dislike Benson Henderson, but I'm not a fan of him. So I'm going to throw him in the D tier in front of Diego Sanchez. Dan Henderson. I would love to ask him how it felt to knock out Michael Bisping the way he did. I'm a big Bisping fan, okay? I really am. I like Bisping more than I like Dan Henderson. But that was the hardest punch that I have ever seen in MMA. I think it'd be cool to talk to Dan Henderson about his whole career. He's had some ups, he's had some downs. I would love to talk to him like going into fights in his old age. Crazy. I like Dan Henderson. I'm going to put him in the B tier, top of B tier. Max Holloway. Oh, this dude, you can talk about gaming. You can talk about his cardio. You can talk about what it's like to work out at home. You know, I like Max Holloway. Very laid back guy. Love watching his YouTube. Love watching his streams. Max Holloway, S tier. He'd be fun to hang out with. He'd be really fun. Now, this one I'm a little bit confused by. Mark Hunt. I don't know what it would be like to go with Mark Hunt. I don't know why. I feel like Mark Hunt will be angry. Maybe that's the way he left the UFC, but I feel like he'd be a little bit angry, just like walking around doing his thing, you know? I don't know, man. Like, Mark Hunt would be okay. I'm going to throw him in the C tier, bottom of C tier, but I'm a big fan of Mark Hunt, okay? I like Mark Hunt. Now, Anderson Silva. Not a fan of Anderson Silva. Don't dislike him. I'm not going to keep repeating myself, guys. Just assume if I throw them in the D tier, I do not dislike them unless otherwise specified. Anderson Silva, D tier. In front of Diego Sanchez, though. John Jones. I do not like John Jones. He's a cheater and a bad person. D tier. Israel Adesanya. Cringe. D tier. Yeah, that's where I'm going to put him. But Rampage. Oh, man. I'm a big Rampage fan. This dude is one of the funniest people to ever grace UFC. I love watching him. I love watching his fights. I love seeing his pride fights. I love the little videos about Rampage. I love everything about Rampage Jackson. S tier for sure. I'm going to put him right behind Ben Askren. Really like that guy. Now, Masvidal. This is tough because, like I kind of mentioned with Nate Diaz, I was a big fan of Jorge Masvidal on the come up. I was a big fan of Jorge Masvidal before he got the flying knee knockout and became a superstar and then became full of himself. Then I started to actually dislike Masvidal a little bit. Masvidal, I feel like, would start a fight with somebody at dinner if we were going out. Like, if we were hanging out, Masvidal would just, like, pick some unnecessary fights. So, I'm going to go with the D tier for that reason. Probably going to run D tier. Now, DeSantos. DeSantos, I feel like if you, like, hung out with this dude, it would be a very wholesome conversation you would have with him. A very wholesome time. He'd sit there. He'd be happy. I talked to him about boxing. He was one of my favorite fighters, like, when I first started watching UFC. So, Junior DeSantos, I would absolutely love to hang out with. S tier, I'm going to put him right behind Rampage Jackson. Now, Justin Gaethje. I feel like if I hung out with Justin Gaethje, there wouldn't be a lot we could really talk about. You know, I feel like Justin Gaethje just kind of goes about his day. That's the vibe I get from Justin Gaethje. You know? I'm a big fan of Justin Gaethje and the way he fights, but I feel like what would I sit down and really talk about Justin Gaethje with besides MMA? You know? I don't know, but I would like to hang out with him. He'd be okay. I'm going to throw him in a B tier. The beginning of B tier. That's where I'm going to throw Justin Gaethje. Habib, though. Habib Nurmagomedov. I feel like he'd be a bit boring. You know? I'm a fan of Khabib. Big fan of him. I really respect him as a fighter. I respect him as a person. But I feel like there wouldn't be really much we could talk about. He would just be like, yes, brother. Like, you know what I mean? That's what I feel like I'd get from Habib. So I'm going to throw him into the C tier. Right behind Big Country. Chris Lieben. Chris Lieben, I know he was in the hospital for a little bit. I don't know if he's out of the hospital. I don't know. Is there still stuff going on with Chris Lieben? So that kind of affects what's going on if I want to... I don't think I can have dinner with Chris Lieben. Why do I feel like I would... I feel like I would have heard about him getting out of the hospital because I know he had, like, some huge health issue. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to throw Chris Lieben in the D tier. But I mean, like... I like him, you know? Brock Lesnar, though, okay. Brock Lesnar, I'm not a fan of. I'm not a WWE fan. I'm not really, like, necessarily a fan of his. I just don't care for him. That's all. I'm going to throw Brock Lesnar in the D tier. Right behind Benson Henderson, probably. Chuck Liddell. Now, I started getting into UFC around the time where Chuck Liddell was really having his fall off. So, I never really got really attached to Chuck Liddell. I don't really know him too well. But he seems like a cool guy. Like, my dad was a big fan of him growing up. I'm going to throw Chuck Liddell in the C tier. I wouldn't really care for him, but I don't dislike him at all. Kenny Florian, though. I am a fan of Kenny Florian. I love watching his podcast. Again, anybody you could talk about like making content with, I am all in for that. Kenny Florian is awesome. I'm going to throw Kenny Florian into the S tier. I'm going to put him in front of Dan Hardy. I'm a big fan of this guy. Big fan of him. Conor McGregor, though. Okay. Conor seems like he's going off the deep end a little bit. We've seen him get into trouble. That worries me. However, I'm a fan of Conor McGregor, and I would love to talk about his come up. I would love to talk to him about fighting. I would love to talk to him about his strategy for getting famous. I would love to talk to him about his early life. I'm fascinated by his career. I'm fascinated by him by the person. I want to talk to him about his relationship with D, how that's going and everything. I would like to have a sit down with Conor McGregor. I'm going to throw him in front of Dos Santos. That's where I'm going to put Conor McGregor at. Michael Bisping, though. Wherever you take this guy, I feel like he will be making me laugh like crazy. Okay? Michael Bisping's great. Big fan of his. I would love to have a sit down. I would love to hang out with Michael Bisping. I'm going to throw him in front of Conor McGregor. That would be a great time. Now, let's keep going. Okay, the karate hottie, Michelle Waterson. Where are we going to put her? I don't care for her, but she's okay. Like, I don't know. C tier. I wouldn't mind. Let's put her in the front of C tier. I wouldn't care, but somebody, Miesha Tate, no, let's put her in the D tier. Miesha Tate she's like the UFC guru now, like knows everything there is to know about fighting, yet continuously loses all the time in her old age. So, nah, I'm going to put her behind Diego Sanchez. That's where I'm putting Miesha Tate. But Stipe Miocic, I feel like there won't be too much to talk about. It's probably like just a regular dude. You know what I mean? So, C tier for Stipe. I'm going to put him behind Nate. Yeah, I wouldn't mind. And Nick Diaz. Now, I like Nick Diaz a lot more than I like Nate Diaz. I've been a fan of Nick Diaz, but I feel like if we were to hang out with Nick Diaz, kind of like what I was talking about with, who was it? Who was I talking about? I don't recall who I was just mentioning, but there was somebody where I'd like, what would you talk about? You know? Nick would probably just like eat his food. He wouldn't really care that I was there. So I wouldn't care. I'm gonna put Nick Diaz in the front of C tier, but I'm a fan of Nick Diaz. Now, Paige Van Zandt. If you were talking about Paige Van Zandt when she first entered the UFC, very wholesome, like very like innocent, very cute. Like everybody loved watching Paige Van Zandt. Everybody was like just loving like her upbeat energy. You know what I mean? But now Paige Van Zandt, you know, like out of the UFC. Taking like she's not doing OnlyFans, but something else. You know what I mean? So nowadays, I'm not like a fan of Paige Van Zandt. But if this was Paige Van Zandt when she first entered the UFC, like probably in this picture actually, I would probably throw her like in the A tier. But Paige Van Zandt now, I just don't care about. I'm gonna throw her into the C tier. I'm gonna put her right behind Nick Diaz there. BJ Penn, guys, I wasn't there for BJ Penn's like super rise to stardom. I was there for the downfall of BJ Penn, and I've constantly felt bad for him. And now I know he's starting fights with people at bars and stuff. So, I mean, I don't dislike the guy at all. But BJ Penn, man, I'm going to throw him in the D tier. I'm going to throw him right behind Chris Lieben. Now, Robert Whittaker, one of my favorite fighters of all time. I love Robert Whittaker. You talk about gaming, you talk about anime, you can talk about shows, you can talk about life, you can talk about working out, martial arts. This dude, I would absolutely love to have a sit down with. Like, one day, if the channel gets huge, I would love to do fighter interviews, and Robert Whittaker might be like the first guy there. Robert Whittaker, okay, here's the thing. You want to talk about my favorite fighters, okay? When ranking my favorite fighters, like if you were to go back and watch that video, or if you already did, I have Carlos Condit in front of Robert Whittaker. But Robert Whittaker would be way more fun to hang out, in my opinion. Like, nothing against Carlos Condit. Obviously, he's in the S tier. I love Carlos Condit. But Robert Whittaker, like, this dude I have so much in common with. I really like him, and I like him as a guy. He's wholesome. He's nice. Yeah, you ever see anything bad about Robert Whittaker? No. S tier, he's probably going to be number one forever for that. I would love, like, if there were any UFC fighter I could hang out with, it would be Robert Whittaker. Now, let's talk Ronda Rousey. I liked Ronda on the come up, but, you know, sore loser Ronda. So, excuse me there, guys. My apologies. I lost every little bit of fan that I had in her. I don't dislike her. It's just, like, I don't care for her. Ronda Rousey. I'm gonna put her in front, like right behind Chris Lieben. I feel like Chris Lieben is a gatekeeper to T tier. Now, Boss Rutan. I would love to hang out with Boss Rutan. I would love to talk about specifically his Punk payback. You know, that was awesome. That show was awesome. He's great at breakdowns. I would love to talk about his career. I feel like he's a funny guy. He would have kind of like the same thing with Michael Bisping. I feel like I'd sit down with this dude and he'd have me laughing. You know? I feel like he's a very, very fun guy. Well, I don't even feel like. This dude is definitely a fun guy, you know? I'm going to put Boss Rutan. Guys, I'm throwing him behind Robert Whittaker, man. This dude is a fun guy. Yeah, that's where I'm going to throw him. I would love to hang out with Boss Rutan. Now, Matt Serra. I feel like he's also pretty fun, you know? Matt Serra is I'm not necessarily like a huge fan of Matt Serra, but I feel like I'd have a good time if you were to go out with Matt Serra, you know? I'm going to put Matt Serra into the A tier. He's going to run the A tier. Now, Chael P. Sonnen. Chael Sonnen, one of my favorite fighters of all time. He's so funny. I would love to talk about fights with this dude. I'd love to talk about how he would run the UFC business. I would love to ask him about that because he would do absolutely fantastic matchmaking. You could talk about YouTube. You could talk about making content, podcasts. Chael is one of my favorite fighters of all time. I believe it's so tough when you get to your top 5 favorite fighters, but I would put him at probably at number 1. He's probably my favorite fighter ever, you know? Chael P, he's going at number 2. That's where I'm going to put Chael Sonnen. That's about right. I'm going to put Chael Sonnen there, and I got to readjust my face cam. Excuse me, guys. Had to make myself a little bit smaller there. But speaking of my favorite fighters, we have Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. I love Wonderboy. One of my favorite fighters ever. This dude is so wholesome. He's great. This is tough. He's one of my favorite fighters. I'm going to throw him right behind Carlos Condit. I love Wonderboy, man. Big fan of that, guys. Okay, GSP. Guys, as a Canadian, I was never a big GSP fan. He's a great guy, don't get me wrong. It's just I was never a super fan of GSP like most Canadians are, you know? I'm going to throw GSP into the A tier, but I'm going to throw him in front of Forrest Griffin. I'm going to put GSP right there. Now, last but not least, let's talk Uriah Faber. Uriah Faber, I'm going to have him run the B tier. You know, he's an okay guy. He's an okay fighter. I feel like it'd be fun to hang out with, you know? Nothing too special about Uriah Faber. So, guys, that's going to do it. I don't know how long I've been talking for this video. I feel like it's been a little bit over 20 minutes. But, guys, the top 5 fighters I would love to hang out with is Robert Whittaker, Chael Sonnen, Boss Rutan, Carlos Condit, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, okay? These would be great to hang out with. And, unfortunately, again, the D tier is what it is, but nothing you can do about it. Again, if you're in the D tier, if, the channel gets huge one day and any fighters watch this video, just because you're in the D tier does not mean I hate you, okay? It's just the fighters that I would love to sit down and hang out with. So this is where I'll leave it up to you guys because, again, this is the top fighters on Tapology ranked by UFC communities out there. I did not choose these fighters. This is what Tapology had, and I just copied and pasted all of the fighters on that list. I wish I could remember who was first, man. I wish I could. But I can't. Oh, well. Let me know, guys, what you think about these specific fighters. Are there any fighters on this list specifically that you would like to hang out with? Let me know down below in the comments. I would love to hear from you guys. Thank you so much for watching this video. On the screen right now, if you'd like to continue watching the Clenbat channel, there will be 2 videos on screen for you to check out. Check them out. I think they are pretty great. I will see you either there or in the next video, guys. Take care.